Which players are really starting to make some noise? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKlosky_WTSP. We are your credentialed members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, you can find everything that Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. And I am here with you Monday through Friday along with the Everydayers. For that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, Evan's reaction to the signing of Teddy Bridgewater and what he's watching for on Saturday against the Tennessee Titans. But let's start with some of these injuries and position battles. And Evan, I have seen rumblings. I have seen mumblings.
That's my stomach. I'm hungry.
I am too. But there are some things circulating now that Benjamin Morrison is really starting to push Jamel Dean for that starting job. But now he's dealing with a tweaked hamstring. How much do you think that's going to set him back? And what are your thoughts on that competition in particular before we get to some of the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure going to set him back, right? He's a rookie cornerback. He's not going to be playing all these reps as we gradually get towards the season. And if it's a hamstring issue, I don't expect him to return to the field lickety split. I mean, remember Zion McCollum when he was a rookie? I believe it was a joint practice with the Titans as well, only that time it was in Nashville. He had a soft tissue injury, missed like all of camp, beginning of the season. Now, it doesn't seem as extreme as Zion's, but considering Benjamin Morrison is coming off of the bilateral hip surgery, at least the other one, one part of the bilateral, and getting back to the full swing of things, they're going to ease him back into action. I'm sure of it. So if we ignored that, I would say that Jamel Dean would still be 1, Benjamin Morrison 2, with Morrison maybe creeping into the conversation, getting more snaps. Maybe Bowles would have a quicker trigger to remove Jamel from that role. But with this injury, I think it really cements Benjamin Morrison as the backup here. And then as the season progresses, if Jamel isn't doing enough to force takeaways or so on and so forth, we could then maybe see a changing of the guard to Morrison. But by all accounts, Dean has been pretty good in camp. He just had a couple of picks, actually, in Wednesday's practice. So, yeah, to me, that's his job to lose. And I don't think Dean has lost it. And this is like going back to the conversations we used to have with Baker and Trask. Like, Dean is here. If you're watching on YouTube, by the way, you should, so you can see my hand placement. But Dean is here, and then Morrison is here. And he can still creep up around this, with his progress. But he is going to have to either be so much better than Jamel to jump up to here, or he's got to creep up and Jamel's got to be so much worse than the expectations that he goes here. And I don't think Jamel has really lowered his bar at all in this camp, which means that Morrison has to jump above it. And with that injury, it's going to be really tough for him to do that.
Yeah, I at this point would be surprised if we see him on Saturday. I really don't think that we will.
I don't even think we're going to see him in the joint practice. I mean,
yeah. And that's not the only injury concern, right? Outside of the big two in Godwin and Wirfs, there are a lot of players that have missed significant amounts of time since training camp began. You know, Otten, Palmer, Tez Johnson, Cam Johnson, Anthony Walker. The Bucs just this week got Levante and Opeta back. So which of these injuries, you know, when you're seeing these long sustained absences, which ones of these are the most concerning for you?
Well, what stinks is that Palmer and Tez Johnson are hurt together. And
right.
Both of them are theoretically competing for the same spot on the roster as the punt returner. And Trey is a known, Tez is an unknown. With Trey hurt, that really gave Tez a leg up to maybe steal that job. But now that Tez is hurt, well, if you're creeping closer to the season and you don't know which way you need to go, you might have Trey Palmer as that guy. So, and especially for Tez, you know, a 7th round pick, he's got to learn the offense, and really not so much on passing downs, more so like blocking and all the running stuff. So, you know, Palmer is used to this offense. That, to me, that's the disappointing part, is that both of them are down. Cameron Johnson was injured last year, injured again, made the team last year as a surprise. Seems like a candidate for the practice squad this year. And otherwise with Cade Otton, I think you're just taking it really, really cautious with him. But the fact that he's been out for, a couple of weeks now certainly raises some eyebrows that it's not just like a minor precautionary thing. Like, nah, he had a tweak. But nothing really, I mean, outside of David Walker, right? You have the Godwin, the Wirfs, and David Walker was a brutal one.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you're really just dealing with kind of like having enough bodies to get through camp. And Tampa is a hard place to sustain those bodies because people go down like flies. You know, you got to stay hydrated. That's how the soft tissue injuries happen. And so I know that this team is working diligently to combat some of that stuff, but you got to get your work in. And at some point you got to make sure that players are doing what they need to do to stay on the field. So it's a little bit of a two-person relationship here. It can't just be the Bucs keeping you healthy. You got to also keep yourself healthy. Recovery, all that stuff is way more important in Tampa than in a lot of destinations. So not overly concerned about any one of these individually, but I think Trey and Tez creates a very cloudy situation if both of those guys don't come back soon enough. I would imagine Jason Light at least spoke earlier this week saying that he's expecting some guys to return next week. So, you know, could that be Cade? Could that be Trey? Could that be Anthony Walker? There's a few guys in my head that would pertain to who we could possibly start moving towards that game 2 preseason contest against Pittsburgh, and, you know, that team going up there for a joint practice as well.
All right. Well, there are some other position battles going on, and we might have a new one. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. This year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Locked On Bucs are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's just one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so we've talked about Morrison versus Dean. Talked about Palmer versus Tez, which is the competition that's not competing because both guys are out. But what are some of the other position battles going on that have really caught your eye? I know there's a battle for backup center. We have Elijah Klein moving over to center to go up against an undrafted rookie. But there are some other battles going on. Which ones have you really been keeping an eye on?
Well, I think you mentioned the backup center and really kind of the backup roles there for the offensive line as a whole. That's been a tough battle. Certainly that final wide receiver spot, who's going to emerge there, I think that's a biggie. Also, the nickel corner, though it seems like Jacob Parrish has the inside track to be that guy. It's crazy, man. The secondary looks great.
Finally.
I mean, it's very clear Todd entered the offseason saying turnovers. And it is showing. So the depth there at the cornerback position has been awesome. And so while Jacob Parrish has the inside track, does Izzy can Izzy wiggle in there as a vet, as somebody who Todd Bowles loves? That's another position. The backup linebacker spot. We haven't seen Anthony Walker. These preseason games are going to be huge for who potentially can come in. I mean, we know that Anthony Walker is going to be that guy at third up, but who's going to be that fourth person? If there's an injury to linebacker, well, one person is one play away from stepping up. Who is going to be that fourth guy? And then, that in the secondary, you got to also have the special teams battle of who's going to steal a spot there. So it's not a sexy camp in terms of maybe nickel corner is the sexiest position up for grabs. It is not as 2021, literally everyone was back. It was copy, paste, let's go.
Yeah.
It's not exactly like that, but it has 2021 vibes where it's everything's kind of said, guys. You're battling for the, who's going to not dress on certain game days and who's going to be the next man up outside of a couple of positions here or there. So, yeah, I wish I had a sexier answer for everybody out there, but I think the sexiest to me is that final wide receiver spot because there are a lot of good wide receivers on this team, a lot of depth.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one going into camp that you and I both said that we really wanted to keep an eye on. It's just like we talked about, it's unfortunate that so many of those guys are currently sitting out with various injuries, but something interesting did happen, and that was that the Bucs officially signed Teddy Bridgewater on Tuesday. He was out there with the team at practice on Wednesday. I said my piece on Teddy Bridgewater on yesterday's episode, but Evan, what was your initial reaction to the signing, and do you think that this is going to wind up being a legitimate competition for the number 2 quarterback spot?
Oh, I don't think so. I still believe Kyle Trask is the 2. I would imagine that Kyle Trask will be the 2 moving forward. If you didn't like Kyle Trask as the 2, then I don't know why you signed him in the offseason to be your number 2. There are veteran guys out there. I don't really think the Bridgewater signing is anything to do with Kyle Trask. It is and it isn't, but I don't think it's taking the backup job away from him. The fact is, Baker needs somebody else in that room who is a man in the arena. And Kyle Trask and Michael Pratt were the backups on this team entering the offseason. And while we can all love the development project that is Michael Pratt pre-injury and what Kyle Trask could potentially do out there, between them, they have 11 snaps in an NFL game. Bridgewater has what has he played? 70-plus games in the NFL. So it's different for Baker when he gets over to the sidelines and can have conversations with Teddy about this is what I'm seeing. it puts so much of a pressure on Thad and Baker to come up with answers, obviously along with Grizzard. But Grizzard, you can't put too much on everybody's plate in the middle of a game when you're trying to go drive by drive. And Grizzard also has to talk with his staff, figure out game plans for moving forward. You can have little conversations, but for the most part, you think about how long defensive drives can be, how long you're on the sidelines for, how long you can discuss things. Having Thad, Teddy talk with Baker, I think that's really the key. Is that, they one, couldn't get through camp with two arms. They needed a third arm. And two, just to have a veteran in there who can really help the room. And considering his coaching background, he's an asset. He's like adding a coach. So, yeah, look, if Bridgewater is in a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game and it's not a blowout, we got problems, right? Teddy Bridgewater is not going to save the day for this season if something bad happens to Baker Mayfield. But just in terms of that room, I think he fills it out nicely. And it makes a lot of sense considering that this staff is very familiar with him. Teddy knows Grizzard. Teddy has known the Bucs front office for a while. He said that he thought 2020 was a lock before Tom Brady came in, that he would be a Buccaneer. He knows Levante David, obviously, was drafted the same year as Mike Evans, knows George Edwards back to his days in Minnesota. So there's a lot of continuity here for Teddy. He stays in the state. And yeah, so, I don't want to really get too far down the rabbit hole with Teddy Bridgewater being on the team. He should be the third string quarterback. I imagine you can also put him on the practice squad if necessary. If somebody really wanted him, they would have scooped him up while all this time during the offseason, right? So I think you can probably save that spot for him. And if you fear, like with Pratt, if you fear it, or you want to bring him up onto the roster some days, you can do that too. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Well, I'm honestly a little surprised. I thought you were going to be on the same page with me. I respectfully disagree. I think if it comes down, and you're 100% right in the fact that if Baker misses significant time, it doesn't matter. Trask and Bridgewater are not saving the season. But if it's me, and I think it's kind of how the coaching staff and Jason Light might be starting to view it, is if we need one game, if we need two games, I'm going to trust the guy with that much NFL experience over the guy that has 11 career snaps or 11 career pass attempts. I don't think you sign Teddy just to be a camp arm. And I know there's the sideline aspect, the coaching aspect, but there are other veterans out there that have been in the league, just as long or almost as long that you could have brought in. I think this is, maybe they didn't love what they saw while Baker was out. And they're like, you know what? We have a legit shot here. If we need a guy for a game that has to go to Los Angeles and face the Rams or has to face the Saints or the Cardinals, we're going to trust the guy with the experience over the guy with 11 passes in 5 years.
I mean, it's a different discussion. I still don't agree with that. I would say there's a different discussion if we're talking about one game, depending on the severity of the game, of playing a guy who you can really nurture with a game plan. Or let's say Baker Mayfield's out for the season. At that point, Kyle Trask has to be your guy.
Yeah, so, that I'll agree with.
So to me, if it's one game, I can get on the Teddy Bridgewater train. If it's Baker's going to be out 6-7 weeks, it's got to be Trask. Look, Teddy, before he was kind of going into coaching and in and out of the NFL, was already on his way down. So I don't think Teddy has the juice anymore. It's no offense to Teddy. He's older, right? He hasn't really been in the NFL consistently for the last handful of years. I don't see Teddy playing over Trask unless Trask really, really looks bad. And I'm not saying in camp he's looked great because it's been up and down for him, certainly. But let's see Teddy. Let's see what Teddy's got when he's doing these same situations. And I also believe that Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield, the offense as a whole, if we're talking about all of training camp, has not looked particularly great. Like, the defense has won more than the offense, in my opinion. Now, is that facing Todd Bowles and how difficult he is, and the fact that your players know each other and all these things, right? It could be, I don't usually put too much emphasis into training camp stuff. I'm just saying that the eye test has told me the defense has performed better than the offense at this point. I still have faith that the offense is going to be very good, so I don't want people to twist that. It's just really I'm more bullish on the defense than anything. That's my point. So Trask being up and down, Baker's had some rough moments in training camp. Certainly, none of that is too surprising to me. I'm still a Trask guy. If you're going to go out there, that's your backup. You signed him. He's been here for 5 years. Like, if you ain't going to play him for a game, man, the next year, let him go. Like, seriously. Like, then you have zero confidence in him. He's never going to be your guy. Let him go and actually get a legitimate backup quarterback. Like, so I don't 100% see eye to eye with you on this one.
Fair enough. All right. Well, and it'll definitely.
And now we beef. Now we bring Tridents and beef.
Well, we'll wait for Thanksgiving weekend before
go.
you and I have beef. Actually, October 11th is when you and I are going to have beef. But it'll be interesting to see with the defense winning so many of these days in training camp. Do the Bucs offense and defense win the day in the joint practice on Thursday? But Evan, we are going to find out what you are watching for on Saturday when the Bucs take on the Titans. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. FanDuel is super easy to use and always where I go to place my parlays for just about every sport. But I also love futures bets and trying to predict champions across all of sports. Right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are plus 105 to win the NFC South, minus 144 to make the playoffs, and plus 2,900 to win the Super Bowl. That's behind teams like the Bengals, Vikings, Packers, Niners, Commanders, and Rams. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP edition of Locked On Bucs, and the Buccaneers are getting ready for their first preseason action on Saturday following their joint practice with the Titans Thursday. But I did this whole big thing about everybody, but football fans in general. Oh, preseason's so dumb, it's so boring, it sucks. I did a whole breakdown yesterday, if you haven't listened or seen it, how to watch preseason games in order for them to be entertaining. What you need to watch for. Don't bet on them. That's a terrible idea because the score doesn't matter. You have to watch for certain things. So I'm curious to hear, Evan, what are you going to be watching for in this preseason game when we're probably going to get maybe like two starting players? I would assume Charlie Heck is going to get a couple of reps, and then maybe a defensive player or two. But what are you going to be watching for in a game that's going to be lacking severely in star power?
First off, like, who's active? And it's not just like we talked about, like Cameron Johnson, Tez Johnson, Trey Palmer. Yeah. They're short on wide receivers. So, like, Sterling Shepard's probably going to have to play in this game, right? I mean, you can't like just nurse everybody. We're going to see probably Emeka Egbuka. I would imagine he's going to be out there.
I don't think so.
For a series, I would probably put him out there to get. He's a rookie. I know we've all look. I love Emeka. It's crazy the amount of reviews he's gotten from everybody.
Yeah.
And I understand his importance. I'm not saying to shove him into a run fit where he's getting into the pile, but you can shove him on the outside. You can do some blocking there. You can send him on some safe routes where he's not going to be across the middle in trouble. You can throw him a screen for all I care. I think you got to get him in a game in Ray J, and I know that's going to come in game 3, but considering you're playing the Bills, it sucks for the Bucs that the Bills are last. It would have been much more beneficial for the Bills to be first, since that's a team you're playing later in the season, and you can just say, screw it, we're playing all our backups, and then later in preseason can really gradually progress into things. But, you only have so many guys out there. So I'm looking what wide receiver is going to be, who's out there. I certainly want to see Kyle Trask step up in what will have to be at least a full half of game time. I expect to see Kyle Trask in the first and second quarter before they shelve him at minimum. Certainly on the offensive line, is Trask going to be on his bum the entire game, or I'm eyeing Elijah Klein for sure. I want to see Chukwuma. That is a raw, talented guy, but very raw. And then defensively, I already mentioned the 2 linebackers there. I really want to see both of them for who could potentially step up as that LB4. And otherwise, I don't expect to see Benjamin Morrison out there. I would assume you see Jacob Parrish. You can't kind of shelter all of these rookies. I know that they're a part of your equation, but they need reps under the lights. And I'm not saying you got to play them as long as some other people, but I would certainly like for them to see it like a Mecca, Parrish. There are certain guys where I would say one series and get them done with, just to get out there, get a feel for it, because you're going to be thrown into the mess. And to have kind of a few games of that routine, to me, is really important. So how Todd manages that is really important. On top of that, and I currently don't know who is going to be the punt returner. Is it going to be Ryan Miller? Seriously, it was Trey, Tez. In practice, you've seen Emeka, Rashad, McMillan. I don't expect any of those guys to
those are the 5 on the depth chart right now. That's it. Those are the 5.
Who's doing it?
And this is a name that I was going to bring up because I think there are a lot of Bucs fans that they started to hear the buzz and they're excited to see. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it's Josh Williams. If he gets a crack at doing it, the undrafted free agent running back, but he's listed as one of the as the 4th kick returner. So maybe they say, you know what, let's give him a crack at punt returns. But yeah, that's going to be interesting.
He's coming back from something as well.
True.
So it just, that's why it's these little bumps and bruises are adding up. And then, another guy who I think has been getting, it hasn't been I think it's been a little bit, he was off to a hot start. I think the last couple of days a little bumpier, but Devin Culp, my guy, he will certainly probably get a lot of playing time in this game. And I expect him to be a nice receiving option in this contest, but really want to see him block. That's the one thing that really is limiting his ceiling, is the blocking portion, because we know if you can go 12 personnel and put him with Cade Otton, that's a problem. You have 2 receiving options along with Mike and Chris, or Mike and Emeka. Eventually, and then you throw Rashad and Bucky. Again, we're talking 2020, 2021 Bucs, where it's what the fudge do you do? You have to put a linebacker on Devin Culp one-on-one, and his speed is going to burn him, almost certainly going to burn him. So that's, so seeing him is probably a fun name that fans know who they can look out for. But yeah, typically, look, I'm going to be honest. For me, for you, James, we watch the second half, and we are if you're a nerdy football guy, you love that second half is when you settle down and you really lock in. But for most casual fans out there, I would say the first half, and if you want to circle back and listen to us give you the recap of what the second half was like, I ain't gonna blame you. We're expecting more action in preseason game 2.
Oh yeah, 100%. And look, I'm going to be sitting through the whole thing. I'm going to be doing a reaction episode right after. If you're an insider and you can't watch the preseason game, you're going to be getting texts from me and updates and little nuggets here and there. So, yeah, plenty to watch for. Just, don't watch it like you would watch a game in October. That's all we're saying. All right, Evan, what do we have going on over there at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app?
Just remember, 10 Tampa Bay Plus, we have the ultimate Florida sports show. We're going to be talking Bucs, Jags. Mike McDaniel believes death is soon upon us, and that's great. So we have a lot of things. Well, we spend 30 minutes. We talk all things Florida sports and beyond. So please join us for that on 10 Tampa Bay Plus. You can always find me on 10 Tampa Bay Plus at 6 and 11. We also have our streaming show at 6:30. We devote like 3:30, 4 minutes to sports. It's way more conversational than what I typically do at 6 and 11. So I highly advise for you to check in on that. Please hit me up at eClaskeyWTSP on the X. And to 99% of you, I will respond. The 1% who are jerks, you'll be blocked. No problems there. It's easy for me.
Yep, Evan's going to be out here like Dikembe Mutombo, just finger wagging and blocking away. I will say on the Florida Sports Show, if you could bring up how disgustingly ugly the NHL 26 cover is, I would greatly appreciate it. Just go ahead and do that.
Not a big Kachuk fan.
No, all the Kachucks are terrible, but especially one that's got Panthers across his chest.
Yeah, I know.
Get it out of here. All right. Make sure that you are following everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JRCO_Bucs, at eClaskeyWTSP. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Bucs or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to be an insider, it's real easy. Like this show on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.